All right, we're recording now.
Gotcha. So I'm Seth Owings. Go around and introduce ourselves again.
I'm Jason
I'm,
Shep. Sorry, Alvin.
I'm Alvin. No, you're all good.
Gotcha. Awesome. So we'll get started here with the social media questions. So Alvin, if you want to go first, how has social media had an impact on sports teams?
I think it changes the way teams market themselves and, the way you're able to get your name out there beforehand. Like in the college world, you're able to get your foot in the door of recruits before you even made any contact with them just by having a presence on social media. It's just the way the world's gone when it comes to graphic design work, the way you portray yourself and you're able to get an image and, have your message spread around the world before people have ever stepped foot or met anybody there. I think it's become a way to be more connected and more personable with your player to organization relationship and your fans.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, that's good. And I sort of went from a different angle, and I talked about how social media has played an impact just because communication between the fans. And I think it's increased popularity because fans can talk about it, and they say that any publicity is good publicity.
Mm-hmm.
And so fans get to debate about it and talk about it, and they have a platform to do that. And with that, people want to watch because they want to see what everyone's talking about. So I think it's increased popularity because people have a platform to talk about.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree. And mine's kind of similar. So what I've kind of gone with is that social media has created like a whole new line of jobs to be involved with in sports in terms of like content producers. There's a couple of kids I went to high school with, and one of them now is like a content producer for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and stuff like that. And his sole job is just to, create videos or photos or anything that they can, just post on the team's Twitter to kind of keep people interacting, try to maybe throw up some highlights and videos before big games and stuff like that. So I think it's just kind of crazy how it's put a whole new avenue for people to get involved in, college or professional sports, that wasn't really here a couple of years ago and stuff like that. So I think stuff like that's crazy.
Yeah.
So awesome. So the next question, Jason, if you want to start on this one. How do you see administrators enforcing effective social media rules?
Yeah, this is a little bit tough just because there's so much wiggle room with this stuff, and there's no consistent example or a consistent answer for every situation. But I think the biggest thing is be organized before the season starts and have clear rules and expectations, and then communicate those rules and expectations with your athletes. So at the high school level, for example, we have a parent meeting for all fall sports, winter sports, and spring sports. And I think it's important to communicate the expectations when it comes to social media and what's tolerated and what's not. And obviously, you're not going to cover every situation, but to lay out some examples, because I think sometimes people just don't know what's appropriate protocol and what's not. And I think you just need to lay that out and be honest about it. I think the more you communicate, the more clearly you communicate, the better.
Yeah. What about you, Alvin?
I agree. Go off some of those points you made. Laying out a plan at the beginning of the season is really important, beginning of the year, to make sure you can never, overemphasize information about how you should be handling yourself on social media, because things change constantly. But, keeping yourself professional, because that is kind of your profile and how you kind of portray yourself before anybody else sees things. So having a meeting and a clear path on how you want your staff, you want your athletes to portray themselves and the image they post themselves out there on social media is really important. Having rules of how often you want them tweeting, because there comes a point where people like to disappear because they don't really like doing social media. But like times like right now where everybody's stuck at home is a perfect time for people who are market and contact creators to kind of do things and come up with creative ways to continue to get your name out there.
Right. Definitely. So I kind of took it down a different road because I imagine we'd all have kind of the same answers here. So I brought in an example from my college playing career. I wanted to kind of see what you guys thought about it. So this was the spring of my sophomore year. Just to put a little context in there, my team's coach retired after 26 years of coaching. And on his way out, we won our conference tournament for the first time like ever in program history. And then the new coach came in. He started around January, and kind of the best way I can describe him is he came in and the first thing he said to the team was, "I'm going to replace all of you. You guys got lucky to win the conference tournament. I would have rather coached the other team and lost." Okay? So as a player, he's kind of rubbing off the wrong way, right? And so the best player from our team that year, he was like the forward of the year in the conference and everything. Him and the new coach were butting heads. And the forward of the year started tweeting out some stuff that probably wasn't appropriate about the new coach. And that new coach saw that, ended up printing out every tweet the kid had ever sent, highlighted all of the inappropriate ones from like years back, brought him into his office. They got into like a yelling match and the kid got kicked off the team. So when I was a player during that, I thought it was very unfair for my teammate. I mean, we all hated this new coach and the things he was saying to us. And, you know, we all agreed with our best player. But now, you know, I'm sitting in a different chair as a coach now, and I'm thinking back, and it's like, you know, I'm not going to be that coach that makes the team hate me right away, but how do you maybe handle a situation like that where you've got a player, you know, you're a new coach and a player sitting there undermining what you're trying to do on social media?
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is I think you pull the kid in one-on-one. I think when you call that kid out in front of everyone, they're naturally going to get more defensive rather than pulling them in and just having a genuine conversation. If you want the kid to change, they're going to be a lot more receptive to pulling them in one-on-one than calling them out in front of the team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a very weird scenario. The coach ended up only lasting like 7 months, and he was out of there. But it was crazy at the time. You know, I think when I look back at it now as a coach, you definitely have to do something about it. But I don't think the coach really probably did the right thing in terms of, I mean, how he handled the situation. But that was probably the one social media instance I've ever had where some action had to be taken. So the player ended up coming back the next season when we got another new coach. So I guess it all kind of worked out in a way, but it was just definitely crazy.
Yeah.
So then moving on to the next question, Alvin, if you want to start. How can social media be a positive influence on teams and departments?
Oh, great. I mean, I kind of touched on it, but like it's a way for you to reach your fan base. But an example I use, I mean, I wrote a paper on it, is the Atlanta Hawks. A couple of years ago, I mean, they were a really struggling franchise, and they're really struggling to get people in seats. But their marketing department came up with creative ways, not only having a presence on Twitter and Instagram, but, I mean, they actually came out with the Tinder night. You know, it's a huge thing going on right now. Everybody's on Tinder and how to date. So they created Tinder night, and it was a way to get people of 18 to 25 years old to come to the games, and they had the dating lounges when you match with somebody in the arena. People would be one-on-one. You'd have your quick speed date. You'd meet new people, and it was a way they were able to get more people in the stands. For a franchise that was winning 20 games in a season, they actually reached record attendance for those Tinder nights that they actually had. It actually eventually led to them getting an endorsement deal with Tinder as well, and they got the nice little patch on their jerseys. So it was just another creative way that if you have a good marketing department, if you're smart with your social media, you're able to increase your fan base and, you know, increase your revenue stream as well.
Yeah. No, that's right. I've never heard of that. That's kind of crazy. I mean,
Not either.
You normally hear about, like, you know, like cheap hot dog or dollar beer night.
Yep.
I've never heard of Tinder.
I mean, it was such a success. They've had multiple Tinder nights.
That's crazy, man. Awesome. So, what about you, Jason?
So I wrote something, but I'm going to actually veer off from with your story, Seth, before. And I think one of the key aspects of being a successful coach is building relationships with your kids. And social media is a good platform to do that. And instead of using it as a negative, you can use it as a positive, and you can build rapport with the kids. And instead of via text message and stuff like that, some kids respond better to communicating via social media. And you have to learn a little bit more about the kids, learn when they're struggling with stuff, because they'll post stuff when they're struggling. And so I think social media can be a good outlet and a good platform to get to know your kids better and build those relationships, so they don't come in and they don't quit on you right when you come in because it's not coach versus player. We're on the same team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's been one of the harder transitions, even for me. I'm 25 years old, and I'm still struggling trying to keep up with social media. And I don't even feel like, I'm that different in age from some of the players I'm working with. But just trying to keep up and what they're doing. And I mean, honestly, like you said, it's a great way to see how they're really feeling because they're gonna like or tweet something out rather than tell anybody, and that's just a completely different dynamic that I'm not even really used to. So it's crazy, but so yeah, mine was kind of how players can use social media to kind of benefit different things they're passionate about, like different causes. So being a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I'm going to kind of stick on that boat. But Kevin Love a couple years ago came out talking about how he's been fighting with like crippling anxiety and different things like that. And it was a big deal, for a professional athlete to kind of come out and speak on different struggles that, people are experiencing every day. And since then, he regularly uses his Twitter to post different things about, helping people combat anxiety, different conversations he's had with professionals or any kind of content he has that he thinks can be beneficial to this cause that he's really passionate about. He uses his social media to hopefully help others because he understands that his platform is so much bigger than most people's that he can really use it to be beneficial. And there's probably a lot of different examples of other athletes who are doing, similar things. But I think that's one of the really cool ways that people with larger social media platforms can really kind of make an impact with what they're trying to do and influence people. Definitely. So.
Yep, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So then I guess the bigger question then, whoever wants to start on this one, are what are some of the negatives of social media?
Yeah, so I just put, and I sort of went back to my first response and how social media is a good platform for people to talk about things. But you're also going to get negative comments as well. And those negative comments can either really hurt your confidence as a player or it can hurt the team chemistry and it can divide a team. So for football, for example, if someone's posting all the time on social media or a bunch of people are posting they need to play the backup quarterback, there might be tension between the team. And some people might think they need to play the backup quarterback. Some people might get defensive of the starting quarterback. And it can naturally cause tension among the team and the team culture. And so it's important to try to block those things out, but that can be a negative for team chemistry, which is so crucial to winning and losing games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with all that. I mean, when you talk about, all the negative things that come at you, I mean, I'm going to drift off what I wrote, but like Kevin Durant was known for having his fake Twitter account that he had because he was responding to trolls of people saying negative things about him, accidentally ended up tweeting from his actual account back at somebody. But being able to tune those things out because I mean, everybody gets so obsessed with people liking stuff, favoriting stuff in that type of world that people can get their feelings hurt. And it causes tension, like you said, when some random person says some negative things about you and makes it really personal. I mean, I think that's a downside of it. I mean, also another downside is, some people finding the fine line between self-promoting yourself and, making it all about yourself, especially for your company or whatever company you work for, if you're a coach and stuff like that. It's a fine line you have to walk.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. So mine was kind of just on the fact that athletes can't hide, athletes and coaches, you really can't hide. So if you're leaving a bad game, or maybe you lost a title game, you can't just go home and try to forget about it now because you're going to see it all over social media. As a coach on a coaching staff I've been on, we've had, different parents and family members, I'm not going to say fans, it was a smaller school, but start tweeting at like our soccer account on Twitter because we had to run a couple of bad games and telling us that, we as coaches were terrible and kind of stuff like that. And to me, it's like, we're just a small college team, this seems a little bit out of hand, but it can get, a lot worse. And so there's one example that I've used in a couple of classes before. I don't know if you guys remember the game. It was like Michigan State, where the Michigan punter like bobbled the snap and Michigan State scored to win. That kid actually received like multiple death threats via like social media for the next week or so. And so just the fact that people feel confident enough to hide behind a screen and send such negative things to a person, I think just kind of really highlights what can really be bad about social media. I mean, it was just another kid. He's probably like 20, 21 years old, made a mistake. Yeah. But now people are, basically threatening his life and trying to destroy him on a platform that, we can all just say, oh, it's just social media, but it really means so much more anymore. And I think that's just kind of crazy that happens like regularly. You can't get on Twitter after a big game without some player being, belittled or, somebody threatening him or coming at him for a bad performance. And so I think in a game that adds a lot more pressure because of players, especially players for big schools or professionally know that that's going to happen. And then it just, I don't know. You would like to think there could be something that could be done, but at the end of the day, there really can't, because you can make fake profiles and do whatever you want. And, you can tell your athletes to ignore it, but, for the younger generation, social media is so important that you really can't. So I think that's something that is probably the biggest negative in my eyes.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point too, where social media, you can create fake accounts, and you're a lot more bold with your statements when people don't know who you are. And so that, and I don't know the answer to that either. I think it's just the world we live in. But people are a lot more bold when they can hide behind their identity.
Yeah, I think you also made a great point about the negative side of being an athlete in that stance. Like, sometimes people will dig into your tweets way back when you're young and immature, and times have changed, and they'll pull that out and use that against you. And you're like, those are when you were young, you're dumb, or honestly, and use those to. I like to say Dante DiVincenzo, when he was for Villanova, people pulled out a tweet that he tweeted out when he was like 12 years old. He didn't know anything. But, it really hurt him in the media.
Yeah. I think that stuff's crazy. You see it almost in every major draft anymore. Some top prospect, somebody took the time to, dig deep into his Twitter to find something from when he was like 10 or 11 to try to ruin his draft stock.
Yeah.
And I think stuff like that's crazy. And it's even happened outside of sports. I remember the guy at the Iowa game, he was holding like the Busch Light sign. Did you guys see anything about that? So he held he put his Venmo up and was like, send me money for Busch Light. And he ended up getting like $30,000 sent to his Venmo. So he decided to donate it to the children's hospital there, because that's like their big thing. And then, he was raising a lot of money. Busch Light decided to match him. Somebody else was going to match him. He was doing a really good thing. And then somebody from like the Des Moines local newspaper dug into his tweets from when he was like in early middle school, found something bad he said, and wrote an article about it. And all of the people who said they were going to match his donations had to back out because of that. Wow. So instead of just trying to hurt a kid's draft stock, they took probably like $100,000 away from a children's hospital. And so I think, that was probably the craziest example I've ever seen. Luckily, the guy who wrote the article got like fired, but it didn't, it was too late. Companies can't back somebody even if they said it so long ago, because it looks bad on them. So that guy cost a children's hospital funding that they probably really needed. So I think it's getting kind of crazy the lengths people are going just to get a story out there, and I guess you could argue that's one of the other negatives of social media, is everybody's looking for something to get clicks and try to go viral, even if it's such a negative kind of thing that could hurt a really beneficial objective. So
no doubt.
Crazy. So, all right. Yeah. Moving on to the last question here. What can we expect from social media in the next 5 years? Whoever wants to start on this one.
Alvin, do you want to go?
Sure. I think it's just going to continue to grow when it comes to the presence and what you need to have on there. There's going to be new platforms that can continue to develop, and how you promote yourself is really going to become extremely important in getting jobs. And, it's the old saying when you grow up that your future career, future job you have hasn't even been created yet. And that's what, Seth kind of talked about, where content creators are now becoming even more prominent. Like, people having social media people are going to become even more important down the road and down the line, and what your role is on the staff. I know lots of college staffs on the basketball side are starting to actually have like social media people. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the ESPN Plus thing on Duke. They have their actual social media person, and they sit down with each and every single freshman that comes in, and they talk about their platforms, all the social media accounts, what message they want to send out, how they want to portray themselves, what do they want out of this, what can we change, what we're going to post, how often we're going to post and stuff like that. Those are new roles that are starting to be being created on multiple staffs in multiple different areas across the world.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think I'd say that's a really good point, because that's something I even had to adjust to when I came to Upper Iowa. People started telling me I needed to make a coaching Twitter account to try to advertise, what I'm doing just on the coaching side of things, to try to jump into different coaching conversations. And, a lot of coaching is like who and
Yeah.
probably one of the unfortunate parts about it, but using social media to have people recognize your name more is something I'm still not very good at, but it really caught me off guard when I first had to start thinking about it, because I'm not huge on social media. And so trying to post content from like a practice I ran, or, having clips of players and stuff, it's very different to me.
And that's funny you say that. I'm the exact same way, and I've never had social media really. And since this quarantine time's going on, I created social media with Facebook and Twitter just to network with different coaches and send stuff out and connect with different kids. So that's one positive, I guess, between this stuff, is you have a lot more free time to focus on that and learn from it and grow from it.
Yeah, it's more important than ever. I know, here at Upper Iowa, and I'm sure Alvin, has done the same thing too. They're really pushing us to come out with more content for our Twitter pages. And even everything from, like, we do virtual tours now, and we're posting like weekly videos of different facilities on campus, and kind of just everything like that, just to try to expand, like give more exposure to the school while we can't bring people to campus. Yeah. So it's been really different as well with everything the school's been trying to do, something that they probably wouldn't have tried to do even just 5 years ago. So
Makes sense. So for my answer for this, I just talked about the platforms and how the popularity changes over time. And I remember, I'm a little bit older, but I remember when I was a kid in high school, middle school, MySpace was the thing. And then it sort of went to Facebook, and then it transitioned to Twitter, and then Instagram, and now TikTok and Instagram are sort of the things. And I feel like as older people start to go into a certain platform of social media, the younger generation starts to drift away to a different one. So I could see in 5 years just being a different platform, and the same sort of concept, same idea, but just a different platform and a different organization to get that information out.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was kind of what I had as well. I think new platforms are going to come out, but I also think that new jobs are going to be, continually created with this. We talked about the content creators, and I've got friends who do that for sports teams. I've got friends who do that for, businesses and everything like that. And I think that's an industry that's going to continue to grow. I think a lot of marketing is going to kind of switch over to something that deals more with social media and different things like that. And so I guess in a good way, it's going to allow a lot of people to, work at a new kind of job where they can, get involved in sports, be involved with a bunch of different things, but at the same time, you just never really know what's going to come out. I mean, I think Twitter and Instagram has been pretty big for a while, and there hasn't been a new one kind of like that in a long time, but I feel like sooner rather than later, you got to expect something bigger and better is going to come out that's going to change how everything kind of works. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens then. But I don't envy them. I remember one of my first coaching jobs, I had to like live tweet the game while it was going on, and I absolutely hated it. Like I was trying to sit there and like, this just happened, but I'm also trying to like, work and coach the game, and I couldn't do it. I had to. It was driving me nuts, and so hopefully, once this becomes even bigger, we can have people who do that for us, because I can't do both. It's impossible. But yeah, awesome. So I think that's kind of all the questions we kind of had. Does anybody have any kind of like closing comments or anything they want to kind of end on? No. Yeah. No, I think it's crazy the way social media is continuing to grow, and I think it's only going to continue to be more impactful. So.
Yep, absolutely. All
awesome.
right.